Hot dog, blues fans, you found us. Welcome to this episode of This Week in the Blues. I'm your host, Jimbo Big Train Madsen with Big Train and the Locomotives. So let's take a look at what happened this week in blues history. Blues guitarist and harmonica player Studebaker John was born November 5th, 1952 in Chicago. His father was an amateur musician who played early in life at the Maxwell Street Flea Market. Studebaker John began playing harmonica at the age of 7. In the 1970s, he put together his band The Hawks and worked as a construction worker while recording and performing on the side. He recorded extensively for Blind Pig Records in the 1990s. An underappreciated blues man by the name of Blues Smitty was born on November 6th in 1924. He was a powerful singer and guitarist who made a great contribution to the transformation of the blues from acoustic to electric in Chicago just after World War II. After a stint in the Army, he ended up in Chicago playing clubs with a couple of young men named Jimmy Rogers and Muddy Waters. The Chicago blues guitarist and singer Boston Blackie was born November 6, 1943 in Panola, Alabama. He began playing guitar by age 6, and in 1962, he moved to Chicago, where 3 of his brothers had already relocated and formed a band. He backed Johnny B. Moore and Lee Schott Williams at the Majestic Lounge, Little Milton at Pepper's Lounge, and played at various times with Magic Sam, Otis Rush, Freddie King, Kansas City Red, Hubert Sumlin, and Homesick James. Blues guitarist and singer Rory Block was born November 6, 1941 in Princeton, New Jersey, and grew up in Manhattan. At the age of 14, she met guitarist Stephen Grossman, who introduced her to the music of the Mississippi Delta blues guitarists. Since then, Rory Block has won numerous blues and music awards, including Best Traditional Blues Female Artist, Best Acoustic Blues Album of the Year, and Acoustic Artist of the Year. Blues legend Bonnie Raitt was born November 8, 1949. After picking up the guitar at the age of 12, Raitt felt an immediate affinity for the blues. She dropped out of college to begin playing the Boston Folk and Blues Club circuit. Soon she was performing along the likes of Howlin' Wolf, Sippy Wallace, and Mississippi Fred McDowell. Raitt has received 10 Grammy Awards and is listed as number 50 in Rolling Stone's list of the 100 greatest singers of all time, and number 89 on the magazine's list of 100 greatest guitarists of all time. This week marks the trifecta for great blues women. Guitarist, singer, and songwriter Susan Tedeschi was born November 9th and is a multiple Grammy Award nominee, and is a member of the Tedeschi Trucks Band, a conglomeration of her band, her husband Derek Trucks, the Derek Trucks Band, and other musicians. She is part of the new generation of blues musicians looking for ways to keep the form exciting, vital, and evolving. Texas blues guitarist and singer James Thunderbird Davis was born November 10th, 1938. He recorded several singles for Duke Records in the early 1960s. He dropped out of public attention until his career was revived in 1989 with the release of his album Checkout Time. On January 24th in 1992, 2 months before he was to record his second album, Davis collapsed and died of a heart attack on stage halfway through a set at the Blues Saloon in St. Paul, Minnesota. He was only 53 years old. Chicago blues guitarist Hip Linkchain was born on November 10th in 1936. His best-known numbers were Change My Blues and That Will Never Do. He was born in Jackson, Mississippi as Willie Richard and raised in Louise, Mississippi. He picked cotton first and then finally relocated to Chicago in 1954. His talents as a composer definitely put him far above the average bluesman. Linkchain worked with Lester Davenport, Pinetop Perkins, Tyrone Davis, and Little Walter. Blues musician and singer Bobby Rush was born November 10th, 1933 in Homer, Louisiana. As a child, he began experimenting with music using a sugarcane syrup bucket and a broom wire diddly bow. Rush has 12 Blues Music Awards. He is inducted into the Blues Hall of Fame, the Mississippi Musicians Hall of Fame, and Rhythm of Blues Music Hall of Fame. Blues harmonica player George Mojo Buford was born November 10th, 1929 in Hernando, Mississippi. He relocated to Chicago in 1952, forming a band called the Savage Boys, which eventually was known as Muddy Waters Jr. Band. Buford first played in Waters' backing band from 1959 to 1962, for a year in 1967, in the early 1970s, and returned the final time after Jerry Portnoy departed to form the legendary blues band in 1980. R&B singer LaVern Baker was born November 11, 1929 in Chicago and raised in Calumet City, Illinois. Baker began singing in Chicago clubs such as Club de Louisa around 1946, often billed as Little Miss Sharecropper. She had several hit records on the pop charts in the 1950s and early 1960s. In 1991, she became the second female solo artist to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, following Aretha Franklin in 1987. Well, blues fans, we just covered some of the highlights here. If you want to know more about these artists or other things that happened this week in the blues, be sure to follow our social media pages or visit our website at bigtrainblues.com. We'll have a new episode next week, and we'll see you then.